Okay, the live stream is up. Sergeants, will you begin your recordings?
Computer recording started.
Cloud has started.
Backup is rolling.
Okay.
Hi.
All right. Good afternoon. Well, good morning, and welcome to today's New York City Council hearing on aging. At this time, will all panelists please turn on your videos? To minimize disruption, could you place electronic devices on silent or on vibrate mode? If you wish to submit testimony, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. Again, that is testimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you for your cooperation. Chair, you may begin.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Councilmember Margaret Chin, Chair of the City Council's Committee on Aging, and welcome to today's hearing. Today, the committee will conduct a hearing on housing New York City seniors. But before we get into our topic today, I want to recognize that this is the last Aging Committee hearing of this legislative session. And in honor of this final hearing, I'd like to review some highlights of what we have all been able to accomplish these last 4 years. As chair of the Aging Committee during this session, my goal was to build on the tremendous momentum we gained from the year of the senior in fiscal year 2018. Some of the budget highlights over the last 4 fiscal years that we as a council negotiated with the administration include reflecting the commitment made for model budgeting in the financial plan, which includes $15 million in baseline funding for congregate meals at senior centers, baseline funding for the creation of new NORCs as part of the community care plan, $5 million to address the digital divide for senior, one-time funding to increase the home delivered meal rate, and continuously advocating for the restoration of NYCHA senior centers that was slated to be closed. Additionally, as chair, I'm proud to boast the growth in senior services council initiative funding, starting at $24 million in fiscal year 2019 and increasing it to $31.7 million in 2022. With this funding, the council demonstrated its commitment to funding the case management waitlist, senior centers, including immigrant senior center, NORCs, older adult, elder abuse prevention, Holocaust survivors, social adult daycare, and many more initiatives. During my time as chair of the Committee on Aging, this budget has more than doubled, growing by 114% between fiscal year 2014 and 2022. I am hopeful that the achievement made over these last 8 years in advocating for more funding for seniors will continue into the next session, the next administration. In addition to budget victories, the last 4 years have been busy legislatively as well. Through a partnership with the state, I was able to pass legislation to extend the increased income threshold for the senior citizen rent increase exemption and disability rent increase exemption, known as SCREE and DREE, to June 30th, 2022, ensuring that thousands of New Yorkers will be able to have their rent frozen and remain in their homes. I'm also proud of the work of this committee tackling workplace discrimination, and I had the honor of sponsoring several bills that have passed to address this pervasive issue. These bills include creating the Center for Older Adult Workforce Development, an office dedicated to combating ageism in the workplace and to developing the older workforce, as well as requiring the New York City Commission on Human Rights to conduct a 2-year study related to age discrimination in the workplace. Thanks to the leadership of my fellow committee member, Council Member Diana Ayala, we also passed legislation requiring caseworkers providing services at senior center to complete the mental health first aid training course for older adults, ensuring that mental health of seniors seeking services is not ignored. The last 2 years have been clouded by the COVID-19 pandemic, yet the council did not lose its focus and ensure that seniors were not forgotten during this pandemic. In addition to the various hearings on home delivered meal service provided to seniors and nonprofit contracts during the pandemic, this committee also ensured the passage of legislation sponsored by Councilmember Mark Traeger, establishing a COVID-19 vaccination plan for homebound seniors. These are not the only accomplishment of the last 4 years, but there is not enough time to list them all. I am so proud of the work I have been able to accomplish with my colleagues on this committee, and I want to thank them for their dedication to the city's seniors. I appreciate the providers who are committed to serving the aging community and the unwavering advocates who fight for the rights of seniors every day. I also want to thank Commissioner Lorraine Cortez Vasquez and her colleagues at the administration for partnering with me throughout the years to ensure that the needs of older adults are acknowledged and addressed. Now, to return to the topic of the agenda today. Senior housing and the city's need to reach this population across all 5 boroughs is paramount. Many live on fixed income and are often rent burdened, even for those enrolled in programs to freeze their rent. Seniors are more likely to spend in excess of 30% of their income on housing than the total population, whether they rent or own. And in 2015, about 1/3 of seniors receiving SCREE pay 70% of their income on rent. While DIPTA is not involved with the construction of senior affordable housing, the agency does offer certain programs to help seniors afford their housing needs. For example, the agency partners with the New York Foundation for Senior Citizens to operate a home sharing program for older adults. The home sharing program pairs individuals age 60 or older with other older adults, younger adults, or developmentally disabled individuals into homes owned by a nonprofit organization or an individual. DIFTA also partnered with legal providers across 5 boroughs to offer older adults free legal services, including services related to landlord-tenant issues. Additionally, in partnership with the Civil Court of the City of New York, DIFTA operates the Assigned Counsel Project for individuals age 60 and older. ACP provides eligible older adults with a social worker and lawyer who assist them with their housing court cases. Today, the committee would like to explore the realities of seniors who are facing losing their homes, challenges facing seniors in keeping their homes, and what reasonable accommodation can and should be provided by all housing developments to help seniors live in different housing. The committee would also like an update on the home sharing program and how the city can improve participation for this program. Thank you to the advocates and members of the public who are joining us today. And thank you to the representative from the administration for joining us. And I look forward to hearing from you on these critical issues. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues who have joined us today. I know that we have been joined by Councilmember Brooks Power, Councilmember Dinowitz, and Councilmember Vallone. I also like to thank my staff, Connor Irvin, and Aging Committee staff, Crystal Pond, Aaliyah Reynolds, and Daniel Krug for helping to organize this hearing today. Now I am going to turn it back to our moderator, policy analyst, Aaliyah Reynolds, to go over some procedural items. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Aaliyah Reynolds, Policy Analyst to the Aging Committee. Before we begin testimony, I want to remind everyone that you will be on mute until you are called on to testify, at which point you will be unmuted. Members of the administration who are testifying will not be muted during the Q&A portion of admin testimony. I will be calling on public witnesses to testify after the conclusion of the administration's testimony and council member questions, so please listen for your name to be called. All hearing participants should submit written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov if you have not already done so. The deadline for submitting written testimony for the record is 72 hours after this hearing. I will now call on the following members of the administration to testify: Lorraine Cortez Vazquez, Commissioner of the Department of Aging; Jocelyn Groden, DIPTA Associate Commissioner; Ignacio Silvestri, DIPTA Director of Assigned Council Project; Ahmed Tigani, HPD Deputy Commissioner for Neighborhood Strategies; Shadaya Sherman, NYCHA Executive Vice President of Community Engagement and Partnerships; and Matthew Charney, NYCHA Vice President of Design and Construction. Before we begin testimony, I will administer the oath. To all members of the administration who will be offering testimony or will be available for questions, please raise your right hand. I will read the oath and then call on each of you individually for a response. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions? Commissioner Cortez Vazquez.
I do.
Associate Commissioner Groden.
I do.
Director Ignacio Silvestri.
I do.
Deputy Commissioner Tigani.
I do.
VP Sherman. Can we please just unmute Shadaya Sherman, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh, I do.
thank you. And last, VP Charney.
I do.
Thank you. Commissioner Cortez Vazquez, you may begin your testimony.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairperson Chin and the members of the Committee on Aging. As it's been noted, I'm Lorraine Cortez Vazquez, Commissioner of the New York City Department for the Aging. I am joined today by Jocelyn Groden, the Associate Commissioner for Social and Direct Services, and Ignacio Silvestre, Director of Assigned Council Projects. I'm also joined by my colleagues, Ahmed Tijani, Deputy Commissioner for Neighborhood Strategies at the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, and Shadaya Sherman, the Executive Vice President of Community Engagement and Partnerships, as well as Matthew Charney, the Vice President of Design and Construction at the New York City Housing Authority. I am prepared to discuss the topic of senior housing, as which you said earlier, Chairwoman Chen, that is addressed by multiple agencies. And the Department for the Aging relies on referrals to other agencies and appreciates the support and partnership that we have developed both with NYCHA as well as HPD. Consistent with the department's overarching goal of making New York City age inclusive, the 5-year community care plan released earlier this year provides an innovative roadmap for meeting the needs of a growing and diversifying older adult population. This plan centers on the supports that allows older adults to safely age in place. In addition to in-home and community service, having a stable place to live is imperative to the success of this plan. While housing is a challenge for all New Yorkers, it is especially challenging for older adults living on fixed income, particularly to find an affordable place to live, as you had cited earlier, Chairwoman. Again, DFTA's priority is to provide the services and resources that older adults need to remain in their homes. This includes in-home services such as case management, home care, home delivered meals, friendly visiting, social supports and community services like geriatric mental health services, older adult center, senior employment, caregiving supports to those family members that are supporting the older adults, elder abuse and crime victim services that work to meet the needs of the individual older adult and their family. By way of background, DFTA services are provided through a network of partnerships with nonprofit providers. DFTA also provides some direct support and resources that help older adults remain in their community. While all eligible adults can access services, there is an increased priority to service provision and outreach in tree neighborhoods. That is a commitment that this administration has made. These neighborhoods, as we all know, were disproportionately impacted by COVID due to the underlying historic disparities, which need to be addressed holistically through all city services, and which DFTA has taken very, very seriously. For example, DFTA operates New York Connects, which is a statewide system that helps connect individuals with long-term services and support, such as providing individuals with detailed overview and eligibility requirements of the multiple types of housing available to New Yorkers. Through multiple programs and through Aging Connect Hotline, DFTA supports addressing and accessing entitlements, referrals for rental assistance programs, applications for 202 housing, and SCREE or DREE, in addition to many other entitlements and benefits. And finally, DFTA's minor repairs residential program is a small but essential component in DFTA's portfolio of services aimed at assisting older adults in their homes. Through this program, older adults who own homes, condos, or co-ops, and for some renters, they can be connected to free home maintenance and minor repair services. And as you know, DFTA, and you mentioned earlier, DFTA also supports the home sharing program, which is run by the New York Foundation for Senior Citizens. That was their brilliant inception of and innovation years ago. The foundation created a response to addressing housing needs. And we call this a boutique program because it is unique and sized to provide individual and personalized services to a select number of older adults. Through this program, the New York Foundation for Senior Citizens matches pairs, hosts who have extra private spaces in their homes or apartments to share with responsible, compatible guests seeking housing. At least one of the participants must be 60 or over. These matches are mutually beneficial. In addition to the housing and financial stability this provides, the matches also support some intergenerational relationship building. They also reduce isolation and increase social well-being. DFTA works with our sister agencies is paramount to helping older adults maintain special stabilized housing. We have spent the last year in particular, developing our relationship with HPD to more seamlessly share information. DFTA's training team has been in contact with HPD and has set up a series of meetings where we share information how to access social services, as well as how to familiarize themselves with the Aging Services Network, and how to work with them within within HPD Senior Affordable Rental Apartment Program, SARA, and their NORCs to see if there are ideas that can serve as models that might benefit one program as well as another. We are also in the process of setting up trainings from HPD to DFTA's Aging Connect staff and some providers to learn more about Housing Connect to best support older adults seeking this assistance. Moreover, we have a strong relationship with the Mayor's Office of Tenant Protection and use them to inform DFTA staff and our networks of providers regarding the rights and opportunities to file for things like filing for emergency rental assistance and accessing the tenant hotline. Finally, we work very closely with Adult Protective Services in DSS and HRA to support clients who have more complex needs around navigating housing issues and threats. All of that, Chairwoman, to say is why we think these partnerships are essential, and integrating aging into all of the key city agencies is key, which is why we're still promoting and endorsing the concept of an aging cabinet. Naturally occurring retirement communities, or NORCs, are residential locations that are not age restricted nor built for seniors, but over time have become home to a significant concentration of older residents. Due to the rate of the growth in the older population in New York City, it won't be long before every community in New York City could be considered a NORC. These developments support older adults age in place, but do not guarantee affordability. There are two types of NORC. A classic NORC is an area comprising a single building or housing development. And then there's the neighborhood NORC. It is a geographically defined neighborhood, larger than a small cluster of buildings. DFTA provides support and oversight to the social service agencies that are provided in the NORC. Across the city, DFTA funds services to 28 NORCs. And now they are an additional 32 NORCs that receive funds directly from the state and or discretionary funding from New York City Council members. 11 of those NORCs are located within a NYCHA development. Through the RFP, we plan to have an overwhelming majority of NORCs located in the community district that has been a tree neighborhood. NORCs have core components built into facilitating aging in place. Some of these services include case management, case assistance, healthcare management, and through health promotion services, older adults also have access to activities that promote better understanding and awareness of healthy lifestyles. Many NORCs offer services such as education and recreation programs, chore assistance, friendly visiting, housekeeping, escorts, and transportation, and some nursing. DFTA's networks of providers act as a safety net to help older adults maintain stable housing. Through partnership with programs and agency, DFTA works to share information and educate others about programs and support older adults that older adults might need to be eligible for, which would allow them to maintain their current housing. And eviction protection is one of the things that we really work hard on. Some of these partnerships include Adult Protective Services, legal service providers, help accessing emergency rental assistance, and the Mayor's Office of Tenant Protection. Case Management Agency, older adult centers, and DFTA's Elder Abuse Program, as well as the caregiver programs, are often in the front line for many older adults, and they work with older adults to access these needed services and the resources to preserve housing. The Assigned Council Project is something we're also proud of. DFTA supports older adults remaining in their home through the Assigned Council Project. This is a collaborative effort between DFTA, the Human Service Administration's Office of Civil Justice, and the New York State Civil Court Access to Justice Program. This program aims to preserve long-term tenancy and assist older adults in maintaining the services that will allow them to remain safe in their homes and in their community. This program pairs social service assistance provided by DFTA with legal services provided by HRA's OCJ to protect older adults from eviction. ACP ACP conducts home visits to assess living conditions and works with clients to obtain benefits and entitlement, which makes apartment more affordable, and advocates in court to prevent evictions in Manhattan and Brooklyn. Through this program, thousands have been kept safe and secure in their homes. As you may guess, older adults often find themselves in housing court facing eviction due to non-payment of rent. In these cases, ACP works with individuals to identify what is going on and to address these issues long-term. This often includes helping them apply for a one-shot deal, screen, and other benefits and entitlements such as Medicare and SNAP. By reducing monthly expenses, older adults are often able to afford their housing costs going forward. There's also a great need arising in the area of hoarding. In these cases, living conditions impose environmental and health hazards, not only to the older adult themselves, but to other residents. ACP is working to prioritize these cases. Recently, ACP was able to assist an older adult in their late 60s who was temporarily removed from his apartment to a vacate order by the Department of Buildings. Sadly, the older adult ended up residing in a single-room occupancy housing for over a year. ACP, in collaboration with Adult Protective Services, was able to assist in providing heavy-duty cleaning and decluttering of the client's apartment. The Department of Buildings then expedited the inspection and lifted the vacate orders. That is the city at its best, working collaboratively around aging issues. We are happy to report that Mr. X is back in his apartment. This process could take months. However, in this case, through our intervention and collaboration with our sister agency, the process took less than 60 days. This is a perfect example of collaboration between agencies, that it is paramount to assisting older, vulnerable adults. Again, I will unabashedly plug the need for an aging cabinet. In addition, our partners at HPD have accelerated the construction and preservation of affordable housing to levels not seen in 30 years through the Mayor's Housing New York Plan. Since 2014, the city has financed 195,000 affordable homes and apartments as of June 2021. 65% of those serve very low income individuals, making less than roughly $42,000 a year. This housing is available to all New Yorkers, including older adults who built this city and would like to remain here. Recognizing that older adults are more likely to be low income, rent burdened, and lived on fixed income than other residents, HPD introduced new programs to build more housing dedicated to seniors, identifying a pipeline of underused public sites to create new senior housing, to make more of the existing housing stock accessible to older adults and people with disabilities, and to provide low-cost loans and individualized assistance to low-income homeowners. As a result, last year, the city set a record for senior housing. HPD is using a wide range of measures to ensure that older adults stay in their homes and community as they age, and to include and create inclusive neighborhoods for older adults and people with disabilities. In exchange for HPD funds, regulatory protections or longer-term existing protections are required to ensure that rents remain affordable for existing residents. Simple changes can make staying in one's home a viable, safe option and create a more accessible city for all New Yorkers. Therefore, HPD-funded rehabilitation projects are now required to include accessibility improvements identified through an enhanced physical building needs assessment. This holistic review not only identifies basic building system needs, like a roof or a heating system, but also building-wide improvements to help older adults age safely in their homes. In addition to this building-wide assessment, HPD has several programs such as Aging in Place and Home Fix that assist with home modification and repairs. That is the gift of trying to make sure that we have universal design that helps all families, in particular to older adults. And we're very grateful for HPD's partnership. In conclusion, each of New York's older adults deserves and requires resources and support so that they can live and thrive in the communities that they built in this city, in the communities where they raise their families, the communities that they have called home for more than 40 years at times. As an advocate of older adults, I am mindful that our priority is to keep older adults safely in their homes. With the realization of the 5-year strategic community care plan, many of these supports will be provided, but the housing itself is imperative. I appreciate the work of our sister agencies who work tirelessly to make sure that older adults have access to senior housing. The City Council has always been a consistent ally and partner, ensuring that older adults have a dignified quality of life. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your leadership, Councilmember Chin. As the years end, your term in the council ends, I would be remiss if I did not thank you again profusely for the hard work and advocacy that you have provided to older adults throughout your tenure. You highlighted some of the accomplishments that you and the committee have provided. You have been a stalwart ally. We've been able to accomplish many great things together and improve the lives of older adults and make them better for it because of you. I thank you. But before this hearing ends, I want to acknowledge that I have yet to formally respond to your letter, Chairwoman Chin, concerning the rate for home delivered meals. And I hadn't done so because I didn't have a final answer. I'm pleased to report that in close coordination with the Budget Director, Jihad, and the staunch advocacy of Deputy Mayor Hassad, DIFTA, in partnership with OMB, will be increasing the per meal rate for home delivered meals to $10.68 per meal starting January 1, 2022, and then again to $11.78 per meal starting July 1st, 2022. As you know, as one of the strongest advocates and voices out there, this has been raised by the committee over and over in all the months that I've been part of this, and I'm sure before that. So I want to again thank you, Chairwoman Chin, for your unwavering commitment to homebound older adults who remain among the most vulnerable New Yorkers. But I would be remiss not to acknowledge our home delivered meal provider network, and in particular, Ben Thomas of Queens Community House, who has been one of our strongest allies and voice in this area, and Jeremy Kaplan of Encore Community Services, who has testified before this committee asking for additional support, and Rabbi Wiener of Jewish Community Councils of Greater Coney Island. Strong voices, persistent, unflinching, unflappable voices. And we're able to say that today their voices were heard and the city is making a commitment to increasing the home delivered meals per meal cost. So a formal response to your letter is forthcoming, Chairwoman Chin.
Thank
And
you,
that
Commissioner.
concludes my testimony.
Thank you. Before I turn to Chair Chen for questions, I'd like to remind council members to please use the raise hand function in Zoom to indicate that you have a question. Please remember to keep questions and answers to 5 minutes. Panelists from the administration, please stay unmuted if possible during this question and answer period. I'll now turn it over to you, Chair Chen.
Thank you. We also have been joined by Councilmember Ayala and Councilmember Eugene. And thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony and for that bit of good news at the end. So I don't have to ask that question, but what is the total? I do have to what is the total amount of money that's allocated for this meal increase?
I'm going to have
Is
to, actually, I have to do the math because
Is that
if we-
16.6?
it's probably somewhere, but it's not quite 16.6, but somewhere in that ballpark. Because if you figure that we're doing 25,000 meals a day, and if you do the 1068, whatever the differential is between the 958 and the 1068, so we'll give you that number right after the hearing. I thought I did not want to not give you the news, and I'll give you the details, precisely the amount that it reflects. Okay.
Well, I've been asking because I heard the November plan was out, and I was hoping for good news. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sure
So
the
we're
providers,
getting it, and it will be reflected in, I guess, the January plan, right? You
Okay.
know better than I do, but that's the commitment.
That's great. That is really great news. I'm so happy about that. I'm going to start a couple of questions, and then I'm going to turn to my colleagues. If they have questions, please raise your hand so that we will know to call on you. So, Commissioner, you talked about the home sharing program. So can you provide some update numbers on how many matches were made in fiscal year 2021?
Yes.
Because there was only 10 matches as of April.
Yes, as of April 21, there were 10 matches. As mentioned, the pandemic affected many programs, including this one. Anxiety around sharing your home with someone was hard for many older adults. So last year, the program housed 32 individuals through 16 matches. So far in the first 5 months of this year, 22 people have been housed through 11 matches. This is above the target for this point in the year. Overall, the program is currently housing 78 people through 39 matches. And so that's where we're at. And we're looking at the pre-pandemic numbers to keep those as benchmarks.
Okay. I think one of the barriers has been that we've heard from the agency and from advocates was the rent is very high. I mean, the rent is not low that someone could afford without some kind of city subsidy. So are there any thinking behind how do we kind of improve this program? How can we recruit more hosts that will charge less rent? Because I saw the list myself. I mean, even in Manhattan, of course, it's high, but even in other boroughs. So if you're asking someone to pay over $1,000 a month just to share a room.
So yeah, and affordability is something that the New York Foundation looks at regularly. And we could not have had a better visionary and partner than the New York Foundation in this program. They're constantly working hard to come up with new outreach strategies. And they're seriously looking at some kind of cost sharing for the rental cost. But I really want to focus on what the main priorities of this program are. It never was an answer to address severe housing needs. But it was just to make sure that we had a supplement to any of the all of the options that we had, that this option should be explored. But it also has not only a home stability, but it is also an income support program, because many older adult homeowners may have mortgages, second mortgages, they've refinanced and find themselves, with income insecurity to maintain and retain their home. So having a home sharing guest helps that. So it's really the tenant, the homeowner, it is the homeowner, the condo owner, that looks at their financial need and addresses it that way. So that, and I know that Linda Hoffman has been a stalwart advocate in looking for ways to supplement some of that so that it doesn't become unaffordable for the tenant and still not so inexpensive that it doesn't help the homeowner maintain the cost. So it is this balance that we're always looking at. And if, it's the kind of stuff that, and which is why we call it a boutique program, because so much assessment and review has to go in from both the economic side for the homeowner as well as the safety side of both. But we also know that there's so many other benefits to this, but it's one of the issues that Linda Hoffman and us have been looking at and trying to come up with ways to address that.
Yeah, I remember, in past hearing and also talking to Linda to see if there's kind of like city subsidy that could be provided with these, whether like the voucher program could be utilized for that. Among the immigrant population are more likely to be rent burdened. So how does DFTA does outreach on housing services that are available to this population? What are the languages that DFTA offer in terms of this housing service?
DFTA, all our housing referrals, like all of our services, are done in multiple languages, including Spanish, Mandarin, Haitian, Creole, Russian, and there's several other languages that we provide services in. But Aging Connects also has a translation line that is used, and then we also rely a lot on HPD for their outreach service, with their outreach services. So the immigrant population's language needs are addressed by both agencies. But Ahmed?
Yeah, I would be happy to add to that, Commissioner. So as I've mentioned in other hearings before, and as the agency has made clear, language access is critical. It's the way we connect people to this available affordable housing. We have 3 contracts in place, both for telephone services, documents translations, and in-person translation services. In addition, we work with a variety of housing ambassadors across the 5 boroughs that represent the diversity of this city that we live in, and they help us by being direct connectors and also informing us how to make sure our materials are accessible to them, as well as those working very closely with MOPD to make sure that those with disabilities or impediments can also access and use our services, both if you are in tenant in place and you need a range of services from tenant protection or assistance on how to make sure you can stay in place, to accessing Housing Connect either online digitally or getting a paper application or any of the other new construction housing opportunities that the city offers. And we have as I understand it, our materials are printed in about 17 different languages, and I don't have the list of exact languages now, but the number is 17.
Yeah, and I think our number is just slightly below that, maybe 14, and I don't have the list for that, but I can provide that to you.
So it's for seniors who are applying for affordable housing. You're talking about the ambassador program. So does DFTA have a relationship with the HPD Housing Ambassador Program? And which partner which partners with community-based organization to provide assistance. Does DIFTA knows about the ambassador program and all the CBO that are contracted from this program, for this program?
Yes, we are. And I will turn to Assistant Commissioner Groden so she can talk a little bit about how that partnership manifests itself, or to Deputy Commissioner Ahmed Tajin so that he can amplify that.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll start if you'd like. As mentioned, many of our programs act as the front line to older adults. As such, they're trained in housing referrals, among many other things. When appropriate, providers such as case management agencies assist clients with the applications themselves. DIFTA is currently in the process of setting up a housing ambassador training for many of our contracted agencies and DIFTA's frontline staff. We are awaiting the date of the next training. Through this training, staff will be trained directly on Housing Connect to be able to better understand the system and better partner with HPD to access these supports.
So are all the service provider, like the older adult center, NORC, and the Hope Meals Delivery Program, are they going to be trained so they know about Housing Connect? Because that's one question that people always ask. How do I apply for senior housing? And we want everyone to know Housing Connect. How do you do that? Which number do you call? How do you get online? The general public, should be able to know. So I just want to see how the training is happening, especially with people who touch base with seniors.
Right. So I'll start if you'd like, and then Commissioner Ahmed, if you want to go ahead. So our providers currently pretty routinely help clients navigate these systems, resources, applications, opportunities. We are working more and more closely with HPD to kick off these trainings, which will begin with DIFTA's frontline staff to strengthen our capacity and to strengthen the capacity of the network.
And let me just add to the to Associate Commissioner Groden's comment. So from HPD's work, now this is going back 6 months. We've been laying the groundwork for building on what have already been some very tremendously fruitful conversations over the years. So aging in place, even conversations about home share, our HUD 202 preservation programs, our general approach to preservation, where we use our dollars to make sure that when we're making rehabs in buildings that people can stay in place. All of this has led to HPD having the information that when we go out and do our general housing ambassador work, when we're looking for which partners come into our RFPs, and we're discussing outreach, education, and on the ground organizing, that they are regularly communicating to us not only how they are talking to the general population, but we are asking them how they're talking to vulnerable populations, to seniors, etc. So I think both agencies in parallel have been doing the work of making sure that people have plans to get to vulnerable or older New Yorker populations. What you're seeing now over the last several months is a unifying of those efforts, creating a strong short, medium, and long-term goals so that we go into the next years figuring out how our disparate efforts, how our parallel efforts can be stronger. I think that what we'd like to also do, and we've talked about this before, is we need to do a stronger focus on local and ethnic media. We need to take advantage of not only the local papers, but church bulletins. We need to take advantage of supermarket circulars. We need to start getting this information into the often recognized view of the people who live in our communities. And we're doing a good job of that now, and we're going to do a better job of it moving forward.
No, that's good. I mean, I'm glad you touched on those, because like a lot of people still don't know, because I run across them. They kept asking me, well, how do I get senior housing? And like, you'll be surprised that people don't even know. A lot of people don't call 311. If they call DIFTA, I'm glad to hear that there's training of frontline staff. So I just hope that when they call DFTA, they would get an answer. You know, how do you sign up on Housing Connect, and how do you apply, and how do you get on waiting lists? So, I mean, that is one of the most popular questions when you run into anybody.
Yeah.
How do I get on senior housing? You know?
I'll
And
just
why-
add, Council. No, please, Commissioner.
I was going to say, and that precisely that point is why this partnership with HPD and the strengthening of this partnership that we've had over the years to ensure that all frontline staff are aware of those opportunities is something that we're so proud of, which includes cross-training of our staff. And that is essential. And I'll go back to an aging cabinet. But it is those kind of relationships with sister agencies that make accessibility and knowledge about programs more pervasive in the community. And I really want to acknowledge something that the Deputy Commissioner said, which is looking at parallel media and looking at alternative medias that are the non-traditional media and information outlets, almost the way we do a campaign, an election campaign. You look at the 5 touch points: religious, neighborhood, shops, as well as family and health, and using those touch points to make sure that those outlets become information hubs for us also.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll just add, in 2019, the mayor made a commitment to double down on city resources to make sure we're strengthening our ties with those community and ethnic media efforts. And that sent, I think, a strong directive to the agencies that this is where we have to go. That's in addition to, and this is why I love the Housing Ambassador Program. I look at Goddard Riverside, for example, a program that is critical to the west side of Manhattan, maybe to many more parts of the city. And they have a robust senior component to their overall program. We've learned a great deal from them about how we should structure our Housing Connect literature, how we should structure our tenant organizing literature. So, it is a two-way conversation. It's really why it's so critical that agencies make CBOs part of their frontline staff, part of their community outreach. It's a way for us to get better at what we do.
Yeah, and definitely also for seniors. I mean, oftentimes we say, oh, you got to get online, and a lot of seniors are not tech savvy. They don't know how to get online. So you got to look at, well, how can they find information? Who can they call? I mean, it's easy for them to call. And when they call, can they talk to someone that speaks their language, that they can, explain to them about the procedure? Who can they get to help them fill out the form? Where can they go? I mean, we have to really make it really more accessible for the senior population to access this information, because that's what they want. They all want to, be able to live in senior housing, because they're all thinking about how they're going to be able to age in place and stay in the city. And that is the number one calls that we get, in the office, at home, it's like, how do I get on senior housing? So that's really critical,
And just to put a call out there, our Housing Ambassador Program trainings are also available to elected official staff, to other people, other local stakeholders who do this work and put the communications out there. So we want everyone to know how to help bridge that divide. So between a mayoral commitment to use half our annual media budget to get into ethnic media, between using more resources to get into local circulars and non-traditional print, and then training more people to do this, plus the collaboration, we hope to get to those goals that you set out for us.
Yeah. We do a lot of that in our office.
Yes, you do.
Yes, we do.
Absolutely.
Community Council, I saw Council Member Brooks Powers' hand up, so I wanted to give her time to ask her question, and I can come back. Aaliyah, can you unmute Councilmember Brooks Powers, so she can ask her question?
Thanks so much, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. It's good, as always, to be here, part of the Aging Committee. I wanted to take a moment and to say congratulations, Chair Chin. and my colleagues and the committee staff on reaching the final oversight hearing of the term. I've only been on the committee since I took office back in March, but it's definitely been a pleasure working under your leadership, Madam Chair, in that short window of time. And thank you to the representatives from DFTA for being here today as well. As we transition to the new term, it is my hope that this committee continues to prioritize and champion the needs of our city's older adults, around affordable housing, access to food, and financial support and other resources to support their well-being. I just have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask, which include, how does DFTA coordinate with NYCHA to protect older residents, especially as we enter winter months? Do the departments conduct joint outreach to these residents to address issues like food access or heating issues? I will say that an example is in my district, I have Redfern houses that for over the last few weeks has been without heat. And we've had seniors there who are on different devices for their health. And as a result of having no heat, they of course had no hot water either. Also, I'd like to know, does DFTA conduct outreach to notify older adults of property tax opportunities like the senior citizens homeowner exemption? I'd like to understand what that outreach looks like. And does DFTA collect data on how many seniors contact the agency for tax assistance, or how many apply for the exemptions based on the outreach that DFTA does? In Southeast Queens, we are home to a lot of homeowners, and what I've been finding, especially with the senior population, is that it gets to a point on a fixed income, the property taxes are so high that they can't afford it. And so they risk losing their home, and what they do in like a last moment action is do things such as the reverse mortgages. And that really hurts generational wealth, which they've spent their whole lives to really build and develop, working over 30 years in their jobs, receiving their pension, and just wanting to kind of enjoy their life after career period and phase in their life. And, you know, it's unfortunate that they have to resort to those type of resources after spending so long paying a mortgage and not being able to survive on just their pension to pay the property tax. So thank you so much for the opportunity to ask these questions again, Madam Chair.
I'm going to open up about our long-standing relationship with New York City Housing Authority. As you know, I believe we have about 106 community sites in NYCHA buildings, and as a result, and have had that for decades, and have created a strong partnership with the New York City Housing Authority administration, as well as with the residents who live in New York City housing. So when it comes to issues of need of services, it's something that we work on directly. But in terms of some of the physical infrastructure, I'm going to turn over to NYCHA, who is better equipped to address how those are done, and also a little bit about our strong partnership.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, and thank you, Councilmember, for your question. So I will just echo the Commissioner's remarks. We have a long-standing, well-established partnership with DFTA. We're in regular communication almost daily around our work together, whether it's coordination around our older adult centers or referrals between agencies for individual residents that happens on a day-to-day basis. So just to give a sense of how our sort of structure for working together, right? So we have over 106 older adult centers or NORCs that are across our properties. In senior-only buildings, these buildings typically are the ones that have senior centers or NORCs, and to the extent that they don't, they are nearby. We also have our Elderly Safe at Home program, which is a program that NYCHA oversees, which is at 17 developments. These are on-site caseworkers who are supervised by a social worker that provide one-on-one assistance and direct outreach to seniors. And then we have a network of community-based partners who also work with us around friendly visiting programs and referrals for social and supportive services. So there's a network across our properties that consists of DIFTA as a core partner, other community-based partners, and then resources that NYCHA brings directly. When we go into heat season or when we are experiencing emergencies overall, we have direct communication with all of our tenants, but particularly seniors. So if there is a cold freeze, for instance, or a cold snap in New York City, something that is at an emergency level, we have protocols within our agency where not only are we pushing out information to residents, but our department specifically will call seniors who are known to us, who are known to be vulnerable, residents who may be on life-sustaining equipment, for instance, to make sure that they have the supports that they need in advance of a weather emergency. If there's an outage in a building, tenants are directly made aware of the outage and also the estimated restoration time. This heat season, our restoration time is down by 20%. And NYCHA has put a number of actions in place to really make sure that we're able to respond to outages. That's everything from staging mobile boilers across the city so that they can be easily deployed when we have extended outages, making sure that we have a 24/7 team that's available to address heating issues as they occur. We've stood up an emergency command center throughout the heat season that's staffed 24/7 so that we can watch outages and issues that may happen in real time and make sure we're responding. And our team is integrated into that process so that to the extent there are residents who are known to us with certain social service issues that we already are assisting with case management, we know to contact them in the event of an emergency. Our property managers also have protocols to make sure that they're contacting residents in the event of emergency. And I would just add, throughout the pandemic, our relationship with DIFTA has only grown tighter because we spent lots of effort actually contacting residents to make sure that they were aware of the precautions necessary during COVID and connected to vaccination and other resources. And as a result of that, we've referred a number of residents to DIFTA for ongoing case management and services and connections to the resources that they have, and they've continued to receive those services.
Can I just ask in response to that, so with the last couple of weeks with Redfern being without heat, what steps have been taken to reach out to those seniors, if any?
Sure. So I need to look into Redfern in particular because I'm not seeing, I'm looking at the outage report right now and I'm actually not seeing an outage reported for Redfern. So I need to, I'm not the best person to speak to heat, but we certainly can get an answer to you. I do know that we have a number of properties that have WEMs. These are essentially like wireless devices that regulate the heat, right? So, rather than overheating apartments, which is also a challenge that we've had, these devices are regulating heat. So the heat may be within the required temperature, but it certainly may be different from what residents experienced in years prior. So we need to look into what's happening at Redfern and make sure that residents have a temperature that's comfortable there so that they feel warm in their apartments. But we can follow up and certainly get back to you.
No, definitely. Because I will say I've been in touch with the heating department. We had an emergency meeting, but I guess the question is really more to the services for the seniors, which would be more on DIFTA in terms of what is being done to really check in on our seniors, especially when they're in developments such as NYCHA, which are city-owned properties. What is being done, like what triggers a response for all of the services that you've just, shared that exist, what triggers for your agency or DIFTA to say, okay, we're going to start calling through the seniors? How effective is it? Because, for example, and again, I don't want to speak out of turn. It's possible that you guys have reached out to seniors. I have not heard that they received those check calls on them. But there were some that went a couple of days without the heat or hot water. And so wanting to understand what measures from the city agency perspective had been taken to make sure we are taking good care of our older older population.
Thank you for the question. I want you to know, rest assured, we share your concern. Both DIFTA as well as NYCHA work arm in arm. And as the executive vice president mentioned, Zendaya mentioned, that we also rely on our community partners so that we will look at, in the example of Redford, and I too will look at, we have not heard anything of a situation there. But what the normal pattern of support would be that we would identify an issue in a particular either apartment or in a particular development or a particular building, and that we would hear from either a resident themselves, a senior center member, or the senior center director. And then we would put in place all of our emergency protocols. And that is in cooperation with NYCHA to make sure that older adults are supported. Most recently, we had an elevator situation, and it happened at night after a senior center was closed. But I can say that NYCHA and DIFTA both were in cooperation and working in tandem to make sure that those adults who were receiving services and who were left without an elevator were tended to until the elevator was repaired. And so if there is, once we are aware of an emergency, both agencies pull its resources, including its community-based operations, to ensure that the needs are addressed. Executive Vice President Sherman, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. And so just to build on that, so we definitely work with individuals, and also there are residents who may already be receiving ongoing services, right, that have case managers or home health aides or social workers that check in with them every day and report complaints, and NYCHA is able to follow up in that way. But when there's like a major outage, similar to what the commissioner described, we also work to activate warming centers together, right? So we will take over a community center or a senior center. NYCHA will staff the center, DIFTA will staff the center depending on the shifts. We've staffed centers overnight, right, until that restoration happens. So I want to just dig into Redfern in particular, because I'm sorry, council member, I'm not, familiar with the situation there, and I unfortunately don't see the outage, and just make sure that we're meeting the needs at development.
Okay, so yeah, if you can circle back offline, that would be great. And Commissioner, if you could respond to the second part of my question with the taxes and the services, the resources around that, that'd be great.
Sure, thank you very much. I'm gonna ask Assistant Commissioner Groden to talk about the services that we offer regarding any tax assistance and homeowner exemption work that we may be involved in. Jocelyn?
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for your question. We're in regular communication with our providers in terms of sharing resources. Of course, Department of Finance runs most of these programs. We make sure that any information is out there with our providers and work in partnership with them to make sure that information is shared and disseminated with our clients. We do also run a number of direct service programs here, and we have the same business process with our direct team to make sure that people at the front lines are informed and connected to the information they need. I'll also share with you, in addition to that, over the last, year or so, we've implemented a Chat with the Expert financial awareness and fraud prevention series that partners with agencies like Department of Finance to bring information directly to older adults and curate a question and answer to make sure that we have active dialogues with older adults to make sure that they have the information and answers they need to access services and supports.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Councilmember Brooks Power. I hope you will continue our effort to make sure seniors are taken care of and continue to advocate for more resources. So we're counting on you to do that. Thank you. I thought I saw Councilmember Vallone's hand up, but maybe he had to take a call, but we'll come back to him. So Commissioner, I guess like when we were talking about senior housing, does HPD build enough, does the city build enough housing under HPD's senior affordable rental apartment program, the SARA program? And what else can the city do to promote more affordable housing for senior?
I think the city has made a target and it's well on its way for that target. We have 12,600 units for older adults have been built, and I will turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Ahmed. I'm sorry to be so informal with you. To amplify any other additional information that he may want to provide, but the city has made a commitment and we're well on our way to meeting that commitment.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I think you did say it best. We have made a serious commitment. So as people know, the administration came out with the Housing New York plan, which was to set this city and this admin apart in terms of both housing production, new construction, and preservation, only to come back with 2.0 that set a goal of 300,000 by 2026. And to that goal, we are well on our way of meeting that goal with 195,000 units of housing preserved or newly constructed, all of which, of course, is affordable to senior, older New Yorkers. And you asked a very specific question about SARA on that subset. And again, we are pushing and we are working hard, even recognizing the fact that through the pandemic, there were more than enough huge obstacles to keep the production train moving, to keep the new construction train moving in preservation. But even then, we saw last year one of our best years in senior production ever, with 2,300 newly constructed and preserved units in that year alone, which that brought us to where we are now, the 12,657. But again, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that 195,000 units is something that is available to all New Yorkers. And going back to what we talked about earlier, is our job is the job of the city to make sure that New Yorkers are aware of how they can apply and be part of that program and be part of that success that we've created. And we continue to do the work by evaluating our private site inquiries that come in. There are people out there who believe in the affordable housing and senior housing goal, and so they come to us, and our development teams, our preservation teams, especially when we look at our work to preserve Mitchell-Lamas, HDFCs, keep people in place. We have a robust program to do that, our HUD Section 202 housing, and then we look, of course, at our public sites and making sure that we are using that to hit and serve all types of populations, given our commitment to fair and accessible housing. And this is an area where we've had a lot of success with our partners at NYCHA, who is equally as committed to making sure that we're using public land to meet those vulnerable populations.
Thank you. I guess that, for seniors, I guess we look at, we have younger seniors and we have older senior. And one of the other things is to really make people aware that they could just apply for any affordable housing in Cross-5 Borough and just get in there, right? If they're a younger senior, they could just get in those housing, and then later on they could apply for senior housing. So I guess that's a message that we really have to get across. Even if you are a senior, you could qualify for regular affordable housing that's available.
Absolutely. And I would be remiss not to mention that, with the passage of MIH and ZQA, we further expanded that into the, as of right universe, where with ZQA in particular, we took down barriers that made it in the past probably more difficult to entertain senior housing. ZQA gave a permanent incentive to creating senior housing that must be used for senior housing, otherwise that incentive would go away. It also took down barriers for creating housing that allowed people, older New Yorkers at different stages of being an older New Yorker, to be able to transition in that housing by creating the steps and the parameters for that type of construction to happen, those type of senior living buildings to happen. So we're using our finances, we're using zoning, we're using outreach to make sure that the 195, both publicly pushed and private development, can serve these New Yorkers. And we just have to do as best a job as we can to get that word out.
Thank you. Yeah. So DIFTA has, I remember the guide that DIFTA produced to make building owners of senior-friendly modification. Do financial incentive exist for building owners to adopt to these senior-friendly modifications?
Well, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging this guide that we created, about aging in place, which is the mantra of the Department for the Aging and the goal of this city. And so, as you know, it's to advance the guide advanced recommendations, and it's a roadmap to landlords to ensure units remain accessible. And it's built on universal design principles. And I can turn again to the Deputy Commissioner so that he can amplify how HPD is using the Aging in Place guide.
I think before that, I also want to have, NYCHA, PV Sermon or trying to really also address, like in NYCHA building, not the senior building, but even in NYCHA building, you're getting an aging population. I mean, probably some of the building, the older building, you're going to probably have Norks in there too. So are you also utilizing this universal concept to help people, resident, to age in place in the NYCHA building also?
Or I can jump in and
Okay.
then and I can turn it to my colleague, VP Charney, to speak about how we're addressing aging infrastructure within our construction and preservation portfolio. So within our existing portfolio, we certainly have updated our design guidelines and design principles that we use as an agency to factor in a number of components related to livability, including adopting many of the recommendations around making an age-friendly community. Obviously, NYCHA's had a focus on also ensuring that we can increase the volume of apartments that we have that are accessible and respond to those requests as we receive them. And also, part of that is also making the campus accessible as well. And so, to the extent that our capital dollars are able to improve the campus to increase accessibility, as well as have the adaptations that we need in our apartments to make them 504 apartments or make them accessible for the needs that we see with our senior residents. We are continuing to do that work, but we also have been incorporating that in our real estate portfolio through our preservation work, as well as new construction. So I'll turn it over to VP Charney to speak about some of that work.
Yeah, thanks. Not too much to add, City. I just say that one of the best opportunities for this is really when we're talking about comprehensive modernization, either through comprehensive modernization through NYCHA capital funding, through the proposed blueprint plan, or through the RADPAC program, is really are some great opportunities to make these capital changes for universal design and accessibility through in our buildings.
Thank you. Does H3D provide resources for property owner to be able to make their units for seniors or their building more age friendly?
So there's a couple of ways that we do that. So as you mentioned earlier, we do have the Aging in Place initiative where HPD consulted with DIFTA and used DIFTA design guidelines to develop a survey of improvements that would be offered to tenants if they would, if this is something that they need. And I think it's fair to say that we reached out to tens of thousands. We saw a survey response of about 800 who self-selected into the program, and we're continuing to push that. In addition, as a way to maybe encourage people to look at this more, or just get more information about how to use their space in a safer way, the pandemic, we were working closely with DOHMH on fall prevention, research, and outreach, and through that, finding ways as to how our rehabs could be better designed in order to make sure that when we get into a existing building to do work or construct something new, that the tenants were at their safest possible point. That's all actually been fed into our current, very recently updated, I think earlier this year, new construction design guidelines, which specify looking both at the apartments, how the common areas, how the building itself is built, and making it suitable for all types of populations. From seniors to 504 designated units that we work with MOPD on. So, and what that means basically is that when we finance a project, we're using our design guidelines which speak to these issues and these questions to make sure that they're ironed out so that we feel comfortable our apartments are accessible to the most number of people. So those are our preservation deals, those are our new construction deals. So when we're doing Sarah's Ella programs, mix and match, when we're using the preservation deals that we have and those term sheets, all of that feeds through this screening mechanism, which is our design guidelines, to get us apartments and common spaces that meet the right requirements. And a lot of this came through the survey work we did with DIFTA, so we can learn how to do that well. Also, and I'll go back again to the conversations with our housing ambassadors that serve seniors when they tell us when they go visit apartments what the issues are. Separately, we also help homeowners who are seniors with being able to retrofit. So we have two programs. One's called SHAP, which is a program that we run with a foundation called the Pardnick Foundation that are based out of the Lower East Side. And then one which is more new and something that we're very excited about, the Home Fix program that we run with the Center for New York City Neighborhoods. These programs are geared to low-income families and 1 to 4 family homes, but especially for seniors, there are favorable terms, and we definitely try to make sure we get seniors in the program, and it allows them to make critical repairs at an expense that is something that is bearable, and they can continue to maintain that wealth and investment that they've been doing for decades, as Councilmember Brooke Powers mentioned earlier.
Great. I mean, like all these resources, so we just got to get that information out there so that people know these resources are available. You know, that's definitely should be under, I assume the caregiver program has all this information also to be given out to caregivers. Another question relating to, in your testimony, Commissioner, you talked about the assigned council project. So how many clients does DIFTA represent, annually? Is the DIFTA assigned council project represent in housing court annually?
Sure. The assigned council project is something that we're proud to be part of because it's one of the few supports that we can provide directly to an older adult. But I believe that there are major gaps in that, and I'll have Ignacio speak to that. But the Assigned Council Project is a joint program between HRA's office and DIFTA. HRA provides the legal assistance, and DIFTA provides the social service and case assistance. And currently, the program is serving about 415 clients per year. Is there anything, Ignacio Silvestre, who's the director of that project, who has a good team working on this? Is there anything that you would want to add to that?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Cortez Vasquez and honorable members of this Aging Committee for giving me the opportunity to appear in front of you. We are extremely proud of the work that the Assigned Council Project has been conducting since the program was created. We also, what makes a Assigned Council Project, ACP as is known in the community, so unique is the holistic approach that we use. We work very closely with our community programs, partners, legal service providers We work also with all the sister agencies. There's so many people working behind the scenes that makes the Sign Council project an effective eviction prevention program. However, there still is a gap. There is a need to address the social service component, right? The majority of these cases arrive at the housing court as a civil legal issue, but they are underlying social service, in many cases, mental health needs that our client have that need to be addressed. As I mentioned earlier, our legal service community partners do outstanding work in trying to provide the best legal representation that is available. But unless we address the social service need and mental health needs, there is a high possibility that we will not be able to preserve our clients' tenancy, and most likely these clients are going to return back to the court system. And I just want to bring to your attention of what exactly is that we do. We provide short-term crisis intervention by conducting home visits, building trusting relationship with our clients. We also make court appearance. We appear as a friend of the court. We make recommendations on the social service aspect of each case. When an older adult is a respondent, we reinsure the court. The Department for the Aging, along with other social service agencies and community partners, we do whatever it takes to provide the assistance that is needed. We work close with Adult Protective Services, both the regional office and the field office. In many occasions, we conduct joint home visits to assess the living conditions and potential social service needs and mental health needs of a client. In many occasions as well, we supervise heavy-duty cleanings to make sure that our client allow access, but most important, to provide emotional support. We believe we are doing a great job, but we also believe that with the necessary support, we'll be able to reach out to more clients and be available to our community partners to help them in any other areas that they will need. Thank you.
Does DFTA staff directly do this, or do you contract out to a provider agency to do the work that you were just talking about?
No. A Sign Council project, the Department for the Aging is a small unit, and we do that. We go.
Oh, so your staff does that. Okay.
Yes.
And then you were saying the gap is the resources for the social service component.
Correct. I mean,
so how do you see like getting that resource? Do you get it? Do you have to partner with HRA, or should funding be provided to DFTA to have that component included in this program?
We welcome both. I believe that working in conjunction, funding is definitely play a bigger role, but also working with or sister agencies, as Commissioner Cortez Vasquez mentioned early, that case that we were able to bring the senior back home couldn't be possible without the help of HRA and the Department of Building. So the answer to your question is both. We welcome both.
As you know, Chairwoman Chin, the resources, the needs always outpace the resources.
Yes, I know. I mean, we also have to look at it as an long-term investment, that if we pay for it now, we'll save the government money later, but they just don't see that. Okay. I guess the other question that I have is that we were talking about NORC. And NORC is a key to DFTA's goal of helping senior age in place. Now, how does DFTA metric that you use, or how do you evaluate whether a NORC is really serving the seniors well, to keeping them healthy and safe?
Justin, do you want to talk a little bit about the NORC program and one of the and some of the services that we provide there. I know, as with, and let me, before you do that, Jocelyn, sorry. As we do with all of our programs, Chairwoman Chin, we have annual assessments, and we have, and each contract has a number of services that they're supposed to provide, as well as individuals and units of service that they're supposed to provide. And that same process of assessment and review and monitoring occurs as it does for older adult centers. It occurs for all of the NORCs as well.
Oh, okay.
All right. So that same process is in place. And the one thing that we're moving towards this year is more, we're looking at in DFTA as a whole, and is putting in place a quality control implementation process, so that not only do we monitor to make sure that you're in compliance with your contract, but now we're going to look at that against some quality standards of some services. So we're really excited about that next step. And then Jocelyn, Assistant Commissioner Groden, do you want to add anything?
Sure. And thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner. So just to start definitionally for a second, to be considered a classic NORC, a building must have at least 350 residents with at least 40% of households, including an older adult, or a building complex that has at least 1,500 older adults, regardless of the percentage of units that they actually occupy. A neighborhood NORC is geographically defined area with no more than 2,000 residents aged 60 and older who occupy at least 40% of the households. The buildings must be 6 stories or less, and or single or small family houses, and a majority of the residents must be low to moderate income or at below 80% of the AMI as defined by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Some of the services that we provide at NORCs, they're divided into core, which are mandatory, and non-core services. Core services include things that the Commissioner mentioned before: case management, case assistance, healthcare management and assistance, and health promotion. Non-core services include, but are not limited to, a variety of educational and recreational programs, in-home contact and support, which can include shopping, chore assistance, friendly visiting, telephone reassurance, housekeeping, escort, and transportation. As the Commissioner said, as part of our routine workflow across all of DFTA's many contracted services, including NORCs, they're mandated as part of contract deliverables to provide certain outputs. So an output, for example, could be case assistance. So program officers who are providing program oversight and technical assistance are looking to make sure that we're delivering those outputs and quality of service around things like health promotion to the degree that is required as part of their contracts. I'm excited that the Commissioner also mentioned DFTA's commitment and implementation of continuous quality improvement, which we have been doing throughout much of our contract portfolio, and are really looking to formalize to look at what are those key metrics in NORCs and across our program portfolio that really drive meaningful outcomes for clients. And looking at those outcomes to work in tandem with our providers to look at opportunities to test and challenge the system and continue to build on the great work we're doing to make sure that we're providing the most meaningful service to our clients. You know, some example of that would be customer satisfaction surveys, which we do in a number of our program portfolios to look at that data, look at clients or what they're saying and what they need. And use that, you know, to continue to build and evolve our programs.
Yeah, I mean, like for older adults who are participating, whether it's in NORC and Senior Center, they are so much happier and lively. And the activity that they engage in, oh, it's like I mean, I visited some of them recently. I mean, they're just like, they don't look like older adults, which is great. So I think if we could somehow really capture those data, that by investing in older adult center, investing in Newark, the senior are healthier and we saved on medical dollars.
I think
That's an investment.
Yeah.
It's been so great.
I want to
But
add.
Commissioner, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wanted to add something to that. About 2 years ago, or whenever it was, because I have to think of pre-pandemic, right? When we first it's like, where are we? When we first started this conversation, one of the things we did was engage the network on what were some of the areas that they thought DIFTA should improve. And one of them, and I never forget this, and it was Nancy from Vision's program, clearly, I mean, was so targeted in my first meeting. And she said, Lorraine, you measure units, you don't measure quality. And what we want you to do is look at exactly those things that improve lives, because that supports all of us advance, and also lets foundations know that there is evidence-based improvements, that this investment pays off in the long run. And we had a whole, years, 9-month conversation building in what are some of those questions that we should ask. And so there was a task force. So that is the kind of work that comes directly from the provider network that we are able to implement now, of course, because pandemic sort of set us back a little bit. But we're so pleased that we did all of the groundwork and are able to start implementing some of that today. As I just wanted to make sure that we are aware of it's a commitment we have, but it also was generated by the network, because they were looking for, they know what you just said. It makes my life better, but how do we demonstrate that and quantify that structurally?
Yes, I mean, we definitely need to do more of that. The next question I have is like, now that we have new senior housing bill, and some of the senior housing have space dedicated for senior centers or other program that's incorporated in the building. So I have two questions. I have one for you, Commissioner. I have one for NYCHA. So I wanted to see, like, in these new senior buildings that are developed, like how many of the new, with the RFP, like how many new older adult center are included in this new senior building? So that's a question for you. And for NYCHA, I want to see how many senior center have been renovated and upgraded in NYCHA development recently, because I know that in past hearing, we were shown like some of the really terrible, dilapidated condition in some of the centers, where I remember one of the council members' picture where like there was like a blue, plastic on the ceiling and it's sinking because of water leakage. So those are the one for DIFTA and one for NYCHA.
So I can tell you that the goal was to extend and to provide 25. The goal of the RFP was always to expansion. It was expansion and also revisiting program designs, because the programs had been the same for more than 10 years. And so this was an opportunity. All we did was extend contracts, and the RFP was to have us take a fresh look at how and what we were providing. And the goal was to do at least to expand to 25 new sites. And I can tell you that it is upwards of that number, close to 31. Exactly how many of them are NYCHA facilities, I will have to get back to you on that. I don't have that data for you. But I'm going to
how many are in like new senior building that was built? They had created space that could be used for senior center.
I know of 3 that were done. All right. And some of them are in, I think one of them is in Ayala's district. which was a new, I think, Mitchell was another one that was moved over to a new facility. I can get you exactly what those numbers are. I don't want to mislead or overrepresent, but I can say that we're really proud that the RFP did put attention to that. And as you know, that the RFP put a lot of attention on moving programs that were discretionary, as many as we possibly could, given the needs of a community, from discretionary, particularly ethnic and minority programs, moving those from your discretionary pot. It was a commitment we made to you and Danny Drum, and we've lived into that commitment, and we'll give you more details on that at another point. But what I can tell you now is that in terms of improvements, we have had a long partnership with NYCHA, and then I will turn it over to Executive Vice President Sherman, who will talk about that. But we've worked very hard to improve facilities at senior centers in partnership. Some of that was, grateful to you for the HVAC funds. That may have been the thing that contributed to that. But that has been something that we have been working very diligently on together to make sure that those facilities are in a, and we've used the opportunity of that we've had during this pandemic to make a lot of those improvements. Sadaya, is there anything that you would want to add to that?
Sure. So to the commissioner's point, we have continued to respond to repairs at our centers throughout the pandemic. And we still work in partnership to really address issues that are happening across our portfolio. We can certainly follow up on the specific center that you identified. I'd have to look into that specific site, but generally across our portfolio.
That's an old issue.
That's always
Got it. Okay.
You took care of that one today.
All right, glad to hear that. So, but we certainly can follow up. So as you're aware, Chair, typically when we're able to have major capital improvements across our existing senior centers, that's really through, work in collaboration with the council. And we really are grateful for that. And we've also had some state funding that we've been able to put towards our centers as well. And so we're continuing to blend funding sources to address capital needs and respond to day-to-day repairs. And, and obviously with collaboration and support from DFTA, we've been able to really work on the HVAC challenges as well. But when we have an opportunity to have, nice, beautiful, brand new renovation, a lot of that has really been tied to our PAC program and our modernization efforts within our entire portfolio, right? So where we're able to work with our development partners to have major upgrades within our residential portfolio, we're able to include our community and senior centers as well. So I can turn to my colleague, VP Charney, to speak a little bit about what's happening in our preservation portfolio, but also as we build new construction, how we're incorporating community facilities.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So Sadia's right. When we're doing our PACT projects, focus obviously mainly on the NYCHA buildings, the residences, some of which are senior buildings, some of which house a lot of New York City seniors. But we do look at the existing state of all the community facilities, including any existing senior centers, and look to what renovations need to be made if they're required, or just what upgrades and modernization we can do to those seniors as part of RAD PACT. So we are really looking holistically at the campuses and working with most of the centers have existing providers, and those remain in place after the PACT program. And then on our new construction, we do partner in partnership with HPD. We look for opportunities to build new affordable housing on NYCHA land where we can. Have done a number of senior projects over the years. Millbrook houses in the Bronx and Ingersoll houses in Brooklyn are two that come to mind. Ingersoll recently opened as one of the first LGBT-friendly senior communities in the city, senior affordable communities in the city. And there's a new center on the ground floor run by Sage that is either opening or going to be open. So definitely looking to improve our existing centers as well as add new where we can.
I know there was a hearing recently on capital projects. I mean, the council member, we always, prioritize funding, NYCHA, and we want to make sure that we improve the senior centers, the community center. Are you looking at, in terms of like fast tracking some of the project that has, funding has been totally allocated to really make it happen as quickly as possible?
I can check in with our capital department on the status of the improvements to the existing NYCHA centers that have been funded through the city capital, and get back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I also requested a separate meeting to look at some of the project in my district that I have funded. I want to see them to get started. I mean, it's like, it's been so long, and it's like the improvement will be tremendous and some of them are used by our seniors. I mean, looking at the center that exists now, I mean, some of them, they're not the best ones. So if there are other centers in the neighborhood, the seniors are going to go somewhere else. But we definitely have to improve the one that we have now, so that senior can really enjoy the facility. And since, especially when capital dollars has already been allocated, we wanted those projects to move forward as quickly as possible. So we can really have them enjoy the facility. And my last question, thank you for your patience, since this is our last hearing. But Commissioner, are you ready to give us the information about all the older adult center that's been funded, the NORCs, where they are, and also the ones that are not funded? I mean, is there a plan to take care of the seniors that go to those? And also the number of the TRE, the Task Force on Racial Inclusionary Equity Neighborhoods, that will benefit from, new programs in these areas. So are you allowed now to give us those data, those information?
I'm allowed
now that we are in December.
We are in December, and this will happen before you and I say Happy New Year. And we're so on track. I'm going to give you some information because there's still one more public hearing, and with all due respect, I'm very limited, but I will always, push the envelope as much as I possibly can. So I want to give you some data that we're really proud of. For the network, there's going to be 308 new sites, and of that, 155 will be older adult clubs, and 23 NORCs. All right, so that's what we have, and we're going to have a total of 178 sites, of which are located in community districts that are TREE, or that include TREE. That to us was a priority. You knew that. They were the three things that we were going for here, which was inequity in funding, making sure that we narrowed the funding gap between the long-established programs and our smaller ethnic minority community-based operators. The other thing that we were going for was to make sure that we address historical underserved communities like the TREE communities, and that was another priority. And then the third priority was also to expand services, and to also, that was the third priority. And in that expansion was to look at current service models to make sure that we had some improvements, because you can't have a contract in place for 12 years, 10 years, and not look for new innovation. It was never to increase dollars for current contractors. I want to be real clear with that, and I want to say that over and over again, because I think that has been a source of conversation. What is really clear here is that everyone was held harmless, and we used the model budget, which is something that was so designed by both the council leadership and the council members and DFTA to come up with an equitable funding pattern for agencies that were running older adult clubs. And we use the model budget as a basis for establishing budget parameters. So when we looked at programs that were lower than the model budget, we increased them to make sure that they were at a minimum of the model budget. And then we also looked at, and those who were above the model budget, we held them harmless. We did not take money away from them. All right. And so that's really important. Of the existing providers, and I've shared this with you before, there was only one provider that wasn't granted a contract, and that I cannot go into the details as to why here. But I can just tell you that 5 organizations that are brand new to DFTA are joining the network. That's something that we haven't seen in 20 years at DFTA. 13 organizations that were currently funded with discretionary dollars are now baseline. That's something that, you know, you've worked hard for and you've asked us to look at every year. But now I have a request of you and to the Aging Committee and to the future Aging Committee. Please make sure that those discretionary dollars still stay in an aging portfolio. That all that does is support additional services that you know are needed, you know, like creative aging and all of the things that we're talking about. With your efforts, we're also now with the home care, meals. I mean, so, and many of these programs are providers of home delivered meals. And so we see that. But the other thing that we were able to do with this RFP that has been amazing was because the city, with the council's support, we were able to create indirect rates for all programs. So for that community-based organization, for that, you know, organization that never had an indirect amount, all of them have 10% indirect costs. We just gave that so that's an additional resource that you can use for administrative purposes, but you can also use for innovation, and you can use it for improving your facility. And that's why it's an indirect cost. You can use it for program as well as administration. And that's the beauty of it. In my years of nonprofit and running the Hispanic Federation, I would have loved all of my agencies to have an indirect cost, but now we're able to do that. And I want to also tell you that 9% of those, we also honored the indirect rates of those existing programs that were beyond 10%. This administration made that commitment so that some of them have received, you know, upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars than anyone else because we honored the approved rate, indirect rate. 61% have received significant increases because of that. And that's what I will give you now, all right? So that's the number. We did an overlay of where the service gaps existed. We gave to each new council member, and now we're submitting to all of the council members. We did a map of where senior services are, right? And then we did an overlay by council district. This was all the staff because they're a lot smarter than I am and a lot more adept at this.
Well, make sure you share that with us, okay?
You did, we have. Okay. For the new members, they've gotten it. I've been holding meetings with the new members. I already did the Bronx. I think Staten Island was scheduled and Manhattan is ready. But it's so that they can get familiar with the senior services in their area. So we created a map. And then we overlaid that map of senior services throughout the city with council member districts so that a council member could look at which are the services in their particular area. And it is wonderful to say that those stars are now no longer places that need services, but a lot of those stars are where services exist now. And that's what I can give you at this point. But I just want to be real clear that the conversation is about expansion, tree, and narrowing service gaps. This never was to increase people's budget. The long-established communities, they have done excellent work. We honor their work, but this was not to increase budgets in that direction. This was to narrow gaps and address historic inequities.
Great. I mean, as soon as you are allowed to share that information with us, I would love to see, the lists and all that you talk about.
You will get that list before you and I say Happy New Year. You will have that list. As a matter of fact, I think you'll have it way before that, but yes.
Is there any other, because I remember we had a conversation, there might be some district that might not have gotten.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. There were 4 districts. Thank you for that, for triggering my poor memory. There were 4 districts that we will RFP because the RFPs that we received for those areas did not meet those conditions that we talked about, tree and, and some of the other conditions. And that was for Crown Heights. There is one in Queens, and there was another one in Harlem, and there's a 4th one, and it is escaping me. I'm so sorry, Chairwoman Chin. I'll get back to you. But there was 4 areas, and we'll look at that. And as people decide, about their future contract, there may be more, but right now that's what we know. And those RFPs will be released in January for July startup.
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm looking forward to really, seeing that information and really celebrating the achievement that we have done together with you as a great partner, the deputy mayor, and also with, HPD and with NYCHA. We have, looking back, we have done so much improvement. I know early, test hearings address, they identify all the issues, all the problem, and we try to address them. And I'm really looking forward to.
We've done that. We've done that in partnership. It takes, for government to work, you need community, you need government, all right, and you need legislators, and that's what makes this work. And it was the combination of all of those. We wouldn't have had the home delivered meals increase had it not been for you, Deputy Mayor Herzog, who was not letting it go, as well as, I'm telling you, Jeremy, who testified, Ben Thomas, who's never, if I talk to Ben Thomas anymore about this issue, I think maybe that's the most conversations we have. And to Rabbi Wiener, who were very clear. We want to give better services, and the way we do that, particularly with the cost of inflation now, is we need an increase. And we can't thank you enough for making that possible.
And also the advocates. We live on.
Yeah, and the advocates, of course.
And all of them that just keep on reminding us and making sure that we don't forget, even after we have voted on the budget, that we still have to address some of these outstanding issues. So,
yeah,
Commissioner,
it will continue.
Yeah, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you.
We will see each other personally, and I will have more time for tea and coffee.
Yes, we will, and for good ginger tea. And the other thing is, and you will have this information in detail as soon as is possible. All right, that's a commitment to you.
Great, thank you very much. I really wanted to thank everyone for testifying today, for HPD, Deputy Commissioner Ahmed.
Yes.
We worked on the council together. Oh, what a big title.
I love him.
and both the VP from NYCHA and Commissioner and your team. Really appreciate all the great work that everyone have done. Our hearts are in the right place. And sometimes with government, things doesn't work as quickly as people want to, but we try to do our very best. And I really appreciate the partnership and all the great work. So thank you again for being here today. And
give my regards to Councilman Vallone. I will miss that partnership also. And Ayala.
Councilmember Vallone have to leave early. And I also really told him personally that he's been a great partner in this past 8 years that we worked together to really achieve all these increase in budget and programs. So I really appreciate Councilmember Vallone very much. And hopefully Councilmember Ayala, Councilmember Brooks
Councilor,
Powell
and
will
the other
take
strong
the
advocate.
torch, they will carry on and make sure that the effort continues. And so thank you again. And I'm gonna turn it back to our moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Seeing that there are no more additional questions from council members, we will begin public testimony. The first panel of public testimony in order of speaking will be Caitlin Andrews of Live On New York, followed by Alex Riley, the Legal Aid Society, Kevin Jones, AARP, Chris Wadello, New York State Association for Affordable Housing. I'd like to remind everyone that I will begin calling individuals one by one to testify. Each panelist will be given 3 minutes to speak. Please begin your testimony once the sergeant has started the timer. Council members who have questions for a particular panelist should use the Zoom hand raise function, and I will call on you in the order your hand is raised. After the panelist has completed their testimony. For panelists, once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you and the sergeant at arms will set the timer, then give you the go ahead to begin. Please wait for the sergeant to announce that you may begin before delivering your testimony. I will now call on Caitlin Andrews.
Time starts now.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Andrews. I'm the Director of Public Policy at Live On New York. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. First, I want to share my deep appreciation for the announcement that was made during this hearing that rates for home delivered meals will increase to $10.52 in January and $11.78 in July. This is something that Live On New York and our network has long advocated for alongside Councilmember Chin and the council, and it is a significant win that will make a meaningful difference in the lives of older adults throughout the 5 boroughs. Second, as evidenced by securing that one last HGM win, we want to give our deepest appreciation to Councilwoman Chin for your final hearing. Councilmember Chin, you fought tirelessly for older adults throughout the duration of your time as chair of the Aging Committee. Your leadership and that of the entire committee and council has positively impacted the lives of older New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, and we thank you for your time and energy in this fight. Now, to get to the topic at hand. As we continue to emerge from a pandemic that further demonstrated the importance of having a safe place to call home, it's critical that the city respond by renewing and expanding its commitment to addressing the city's affordable housing crisis. Today, more than half of older renters are rent burdened, and the number of older adults in homeless shelters is expected to triple by 2030 without significant intervention. These realities make it critical that we utilize every tool in our toolbox to combat the crisis. From developing affordable senior housing with services, to repairing NYCC, to bolstering SCREE, to optimizing our zoning code, we need to do it all. Examples of what can be done when we work hard and prioritize affordable senior housing are evidenced in the newly developed affordable senior housing that exists throughout the city. The Tres Puentes building in the Bronx, developed by the West Side Federation, is home to a vibrant new senior center. Hannock Corona in Queens showcases new energy efficiency standards. Sages, Ingersoll, and Corona residences in the Bronx and Brooklyn spearheaded the new LGBTQ affirming housing model. These developments and many others show not only what is possible in supporting the lives of hundreds of older residents, but that affordable senior housing can be assets to the entire community in which they serve. It's a win-win. So to build on this and to address the other issues that we have discussed during this hearing, including the important issues within NYCC, which is an extremely important piece of housing older New Yorkers, I want to jump to our recommendations. First, Live On New York asks that the city implement the housing recommendations gathered by more than 80 community-based organizations outlined in our United for Housing report. That means developing more than 1,000 senior housing units per year for extremely low-income older adults. We also need to amend the zoning code in order to integrate ADUs more fully as a caregiving model of support. Additionally, we need additional capital funding for public housing, and we need to continue to strengthen the SCREE program. There are a number of state bills that I will include in my written testimony that can be supported to do just this. Finally, we also need to increase the per unit reimbursement rate within SARA to ensure that service funding is appropriately available within new SARA residences. And with that, I'll stop and thank you again for your time, Councilmember Chin, not only in this hearing, but throughout your tenure as chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you to Live On. I still remember we started this whole push for affordable housing for senior based on your study, showing that there were like, back then, I think it was like 200,000 seniors on waiting lists. And I think that really got the ball rolling. So, but all the advocacy from Live On and your predecessors, I really appreciate all your support and all these victories. You guys will really, you and your organization has really helped push it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. My first year was the year of the senior, so it's been good since then.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. I will now call on Alex Riley.
Time starts now.
Thank you very much. Thanks to Councilmember Chin and the committee for convening this hearing on such an important topic. I'm Alex Riley, Director of the Elder Law Practice at the Legal Aid Society. I want to start by talking about something that some of the Department for the Aging staff spoke about at some length, and that Chair Chin, you had asked at least one question about, which is the Assigned Counsel Project. So the Legal Aid Society has been one of the legal providers for the Assigned Counsel Project since its inception. I don't know exactly how long it's been around, maybe 15 years, something like that. And we agree that this is a really crucial project. It's a crucial program to help keep seniors in their homes because, as Ignacio Silvestri said, so many housing court cases stem from social services problems, and without some sort of social work intervention, those problems go unresolved, and then the senior winds up back in housing court. But I do want to mention a couple of things, sort of clarifications of what was said earlier. First of all, it's important to understand that the DIFTA social work component of the ACP exists only in Brooklyn and Manhattan. There is no DIFTA ACP component in the Bronx or in Queens. So to the extent that any social work intervention is being done, the legal services providers have to come up with the funding to get that work done or find help elsewhere. Another thing I want to mention is that Ignacio Silvestri emphasized the short-term nature of the social work intervention in these cases, and that's very important to understand because some of these cases really require long-term intervention. Some of these cases involving nuisance allegations are settled with what are called probationary agreements, where the client is supposed to engage or not engage in certain behavior for a couple of years. And you really need social work intervention during that period of time, but DIFTA won't provide it because the ACP is set up to be a short-term crisis intervention program. So that aspect of the program is missing, really. In addition, the DIFTA used to solely administer this project along with the court system, but that changed in, I believe it was 2018, when HRA and OCJ came in and started administering the program. And since then, we've been concerned that there's been sort of a less of an emphasis or appreciation of the program. I will tell you that as of July 1st of 2021, HRA announced that contrary to what had happened for many years previously, where all sorts of different types of housing cases would be referred to legal services providers through the ACP, only nuisance cases would be referred. We were concerned about that for various reasons, but we're even more concerned now because, at least in Brooklyn, the flow of cases has ground almost completely to a halt. Since July 1st, Legal Aid Brooklyn, we've received maybe 5-6 referrals for that entire 5-month period of ACP cases. And I've checked with my counterpart at Legal Services, which is the other provider, and they've had the same experience. So that is of obvious concern to us. What we would hope is that the committee would work with HRA and DIFTA to reverse that trend, to increase the scope of the project, to increase the social services element beyond Brooklyn and Manhattan, increase the scope of eligible cases beyond that narrow category of nuisance cases, and to increase the scope of the social services support generally from short-term crisis to longer-term social work support in inappropriate instances. I also wanted to say something about finding housing for seniors more generally. There was mention of Housing Connect earlier. So we're seeing two problems and have for a long time. The first is seniors who need help finding housing immediately, not finding subsidized housing for which there's waiting lists of years. Seniors have nowhere to turn for this assistance. We have clients who think that the way to find housing is to walk around your neighborhood and look in windows to see signs about vacant apartments. They're totally unequipped to find apartments the way one has to do it now by doing internet searches. And then, as I believe Chair Chin, you were saying earlier, with respect to subsidized housing, seniors are always amazed to find that waiting lists are so long. But there are other sources of amazement. They're also amazed to find that there's no one to help with these types of searches. I know that there is the ambassador program, but that's quite limited. In my written testimony, you will see that this morning, I did a number of searches on the internet as if I was applying or trying to find senior housing. First thing I did was to go to the Housing Connect portal, and I pretended that I was a single older adult with household income of $12,000 a year, and it turned up 0 responses. There was nothing for me to apply to at all. I looked at other sites for housing providers, New York Foundation for Seniors, JASA. Another problem is that if you want to apply to these places, as you probably know, there's no central way to do it. For JASAs, or rather New York Foundations, I think 7 properties that are currently accepting applications, you would have to submit a separate application for each property. And there's all sorts of dire warnings about if you submit 2 by accident, you'll be put to the bottom of the list, or for JASA, you'll be disqualified entirely. This is very complicated. Many of our clients are totally unable to do this sort of thing on their own, and there's nowhere to send them. Again, there's the ambassador program, but our understanding is that focuses on what shows up in Housing Connect, and for the person I just mentioned, the fictitious single person with $12,000 a year in income, that there absolutely nothing comes up at all. So thank you once again. I hope that the city will find a way to put resources both toward expanding the ACP and to getting critical assistance to seniors with finding immediate housing solutions, and also more long-term subsidized housing, because as the January 15th end of the moratorium looms, we're getting very worried about what this is going to look like. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alex, for all your great work all these years, and hopefully the committee, council will also take note of this and make sure that the next council, the next committee chair will have all this information. We really appreciate all the work that you have done in coming to testify, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I will now call on Kevin Jones.
Time starts now.
Good morning, Chairman Chin and members of the Committee on Aging. My name is Kevin Jones. I'm the Associate State Director for Advocacy at AARP New York. We represent 750,000 members of the 50+ community across New York City. Thank you for providing AARP with the opportunity to testify at today's hearing to discuss the state of housing for older New Yorkers. As many of you know, older adults are one of the fastest growing demographics in New York City and will continue to make up a larger portion of the city's entire population in the years ahead as more New Yorkers desire to age in their communities and in their neighborhoods. However, our members and other 50+ New Yorkers of all income levels and background have identified housing affordability as one of their primary concerns and fear that rising housing costs will impact their ability to age in their communities now and in the future. According to a 2016 retirement preparedness survey that AARP conducted with middle-class baby boomers and Gen Xers across New York, more than 70% of this group stated that housing costs were having a serious impact on their household's overall financial health, and 61% of Gen Xers indicated that they plan to move from New York in the future due to the issue of housing affordability. Over the past 2 decades, we've witnessed New York City's affordability housing crisis continue to grow worse and place a significant burden on the lives and well-being of 50+ New Yorkers, especially low-income older adults. This crisis will continue to threaten the population's ability to age with dignity in their communities in the future without sufficient action from our leaders in government. The New York City Housing and Vacancy Survey of 2018 identified more than 44% of all renter households in New York City are rent burdened, and 25% of those households are severely rent burdened, meaning that they pay at least half of their income on rent. The study also found that low-income seniors, adults above the age of 60, make up a disproportionate share of the severely rent-burdened household, as more than 30% of all senior households and 35% of single seniors were identified as low-income and severely rent-burdened. The COVID-19 pandemic and financial fallout from the crisis have further complicated and worsened New York City's affordable housing crisis for older adults. As a result of COVID-19, many older New Yorkers have struggled to keep up with their rent or mortgage payments due to the loss of employment or the loss of a spouse or loved one in their household. Although some neighborhoods saw brief dips in housing prices at the height of the pandemic, New York City has witnessed a surge in the cost of housing over the past few months to such an extent that it's become one of the most expensive rental markets again in the United States. As New York City continues in its recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, we need our elected leaders to implement policies and programs that protect older New Yorkers from losing their homes, especially as the future of the state's eviction moratorium remains uncertain beyond January of 2022, as well as policies that address many of the underlying issues that has contributed to New York City's affordability crisis and left large portions of our aging population vulnerable to housing and instability for years.
I'm expired.
I am going to submit in writing a list of recommendations, but I just want to echo AARP's appreciation for all the work that's done by this committee over the last few years, and particularly Chairman Chen. It's been a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you. Thank you to all the support and partnership with AARP, all the advocacy at City Hall with your red t-shirts at all the hearing. Truly appreciate it. Thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I will now call on Chris Wadello.
Time starts now.
Hi, good afternoon, Chairwoman Chin and members of the Aging Committee. Thank you, grateful for the opportunity to testify on housing older adults here in New York City. My name is Chris Wadello. I'm the Director of External Affairs of NYCC. Chairwoman, I just want to say what a pleasure it's been to work with you over the years, and I just want to wish you the best of luck in your what's next. NYCC is a trade association for the affordable housing industry here in New York. We have over 375 members, both foreign and nonprofit developers, lenders, investors, architects, all the components that go into a building affordable housing. And we're responsible for building most of the affordable housing that is here in New York State and across the city. I don't think I have to belabor the aging statistics, but we know that we are going to continue to age. The city is continually getting older, and older adults account for over 13% of the population. And the last boomer won't finish turning 65 until 9 years from now in 2030. So we need to do more and figure out ways that we can produce the affordable housing and preserve the affordable housing to keep our older adults with a roof over their head. And I want to echo what Live On New York proposed as part of the United for Housing Coalition. It's a group of 80 organizations that came together to come up with recommendations for the next administration. I think one of the ways that we can push the envelope to create greater density is to institute a citywide affordable housing zoning bonus of 25% as of right floor area ratio to enable affordable housing projects to achieve that higher density and compete against market rate development. In the next administration, we know can do this by expanding the given benefit through heirs and hopefully create more units in that way. I also wanted to just mention that one of the initiatives that we have, for older adults to age in place, we need to make sure that they're connected. And if this pandemic really showed us that can be limited, especially when you can't get out and around to see others and connect with services in person. And so we had found that over 60% of older adults struggle to access affordable high-speed internet. And so we had launched our digital equity initiative back in 2020. And we're working in partnership with the Ford Foundation, Smith Futures, and the Broadband Equity Partnership to map out all the affordable housing across the state. And of course, here in New York City, determine what their connectivity is. Do they have fiber that runs to the building? And if not, what is needed to do that? And our goal now that we've done that, we are going to be looking to see how we can leverage federal funding to make sure that all affordable housing in New York City and across the state has a connection to fiber, so people can access high-speed internet access, and also work with our partners at New York State to leverage additional federal broadband dollars to make sure that there is digital literacy programs in all affordable housing, and so we can make sure that people are connected. We know that older adults were accessing the internet in ways they probably never thought of before, although they are certainly more digital literate than maybe my parents' generation, and we need to make sure that this is not an issue again. So as far as affordable housing goes, we are looking to close that digital divide and make it a place where people can age successfully. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Hopefully, I know a lot of seniors were at least had the opportunity to learn how to use the computer and get on Zoom and participate in the program. And really thank you to all your advocacy and your partnership, even during when you were at AARP.
Yes, thank you.
Chris. I'm glad that right now you are also involved with another great organization that focuses on affordable housing. So
thank you. Always trying to bring
the
aging lens to this work here. So thank you very much.
That's good. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Chris. I will now call in Joseph Condon.
Time starts now.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Joseph Condon. I'm testifying on behalf of the Community Housing Improvement Program, also known as CHIP. CHIP members are long-term owners of rent-stabilized housing. They have good relationships with their tenants, and they become part of the communities in which they provide housing. Chair Member Chin, thank you for the opportunity. We've tried to work together before, so thank you for all those past attempts. Today, I'm here to sort of talk about the experiences our housing providers have had with their tenants who are seniors, in particular in their assistance in helping them participate in the SCREE program, which is the Senior Citizen Rent Increase Exemption Program. The SCREE program freezes tenants' rents at the time of the application, and all future rent increases for that unit are paid by the city through deductions in the building's property taxes. It's an excellent program to assist seniors on fixed incomes in being able to age in their communities where they have friends, relatives, and are familiar with the neighborhood. Unfortunately, sometimes the administration of the program by the Department of Finance is often filled with errors and mistakes, causes difficulties for both the owners of the buildings as well as the tenants themselves. This testimony today is just to bring two recent issues with the SCREE program to your attention. First, ever since the passage of the 2019 HSTPA, the Department of Finance has been reducing SCREE benefits received by tenants with preferential rents and increasing the amount these tenants actually pay in rent, whether it's an unintended consequence of the 2019 HSTPA or administrative errors at the Department of Finance. What we're seeing on the ground and what seniors are seeing is, in some instances, their rents are increasing under the SCREE program simply because they had a preferential rent in place and attempted to renew it. I can get into more detail, and there's more detail in my written testimony about the issues happening there. Secondly, I just wanted to raise another issue that we're seeing with the SCREE recipients. In some instances, when they are renewing their benefits due to receipt of increased unemployment benefits, either during 2020 or 2021, it is causing issues in the recertification portion here. It's actually causing them to lose their benefits on renewal. It's due to the income cap on eligibility for SCRE tenants, as well as the rent burden requirement that they face. Seniors must be paying at least 1/3 of their income towards rent in order to qualify. So the receipt of the increased unemployment benefits is pushing seniors above these thresholds. And although tenants are being instructed to reapply once those insurance benefits lapse or are no longer being received, what that would do is cause the tenant to lose their frozen rent, and in reapplying, it would set a new rent at the current amount, even though their income would return to pre-unemployment benefit levels. So just wanted to raise these two issues for the committee. We know there's not much time left in this year's session, but certainly for next year and anything that can be done in the meantime, it would be very helpful to the recipients of the SCRE benefits. So that's it. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to working with this committee in the future. And well wishes to Chair Chin on your future as well.
Thank you, Joseph. If there are people who are caught in that system, they're having issue with SCRE, let us know or help them contact their council member, because we do work with Department of Finance to try to resolve these SCRE problems. So I think every council member's office do have staff that works with seniors and on these programs. So they should definitely reach out and we can see how we can be helpful.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We do have a panelist with a hand raised. Alex O'Reilly can.
Oh, yeah, Alex.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to build on what Mr. Condon was saying about the SCRE issues. The unemployment insurance piece I've not encountered yet, but I'm glad to know about it. Well, I'm certainly going to take that back to my colleagues and others. But we are very much aware of the preferential rent issue. Mm-hmm. This does seem to have been an unintended consequence of the HSTPA, which made all preferential rents permanent. We had a meeting with the Department of Finance a month or two ago on this issue, and they committed, first of all, that they would, in some instances, we've been able to get them to, so to speak, fix this problem in individual cases, and they committed to doing so on a case-by-case basis. The problem is that it's impossible for the DOF to identify these cases on its own with their existing records, so they have to be brought to their attention. We also wanted them to do outreach on this issue because it's kind of a complicated issue, and our experience has been that clients have reached out to various elected officials' offices that haven't really known what to do about the problem because it's sort of strange, and then the issues kind of go nowhere. So we wanted the DOF to do outreach. I sent an email to them a couple of weeks ago asking, once again, are you going to do this? No response. So to the extent that the committee could press the Department of Finance to get in front of this and start alerting everyone about this issue, which is pretty easy to spot because, as Mr. Condon said, it's when you have somebody who has a preferential rent and all of a sudden one day their SCRE practically disappears, then you have that issue. So if the DOF could do outreach on that, I think that would be a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you for your suggestion. I know our office has cases that came in that was on this issue, and then staff had to reach out to DOF to try to get it resolved. So we will follow up on that. Thank you for your suggestion. Committee counsel?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So at this time, if your name has not been called and you still wish to testify, please raise your hand using the Zoom hand raise function. Okay. Chair Chen, we have concluded public testimony for this hearing, and I will now turn it back to you for closing remarks.
Yeah, I just wanted to, thank you again to everyone who participated in this hearing, and thank you for all your advocacy all this year for our older adults. We have made big progress, and hopefully the committee in the next session will continue to build on our achievements. And I want to thank all the sergeants for helping us organize the hearing today, and happy holidays to everyone. The hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.